Hey, you guys. It's Ever So Clever, and I'm Amy.
And I'm Heather, and we're the experienced empaths. Thank you for joining Ever So Clever Conversations with Amy and Heather.
We're super happy to have you here.
We
This
are.
conversation today is about why empathic people tend to attract narcissists and really what to do about that, because it's obviously a big problem. Our goal with these conversations is to guide empaths through these turbulent times and really help them bloom in the right for themselves in the way that they want for themselves.
Right. So, as we're talking, I will be looking at our Facebook page. Please comment, share your insight. We say we're experienced, we're not experts. We would love to hear what you have to say, any personal experiences, any comments. We'll be watching for those, and also share if you feel like someone else would benefit from our video. And if you're watching us on replay too, we'll be checking back throughout the day and weeks to come for any comments. So if you see me looking downward, that's me checking my phone. And welcome and say hello so we know you're here and joining us. So we'll start our conversation number 6.
Yeah, can you believe it? Oh my gosh.
Already, you guys, this is so exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, Heather and I were just talking before coming on that my psyche, I think, is aware that we're going to talk about this today because I've had a lot of narcissistic behavior and people in my life. And I think maybe today it will heal something in me and break something because I was kind of, amping up last night to this. And I'm realizing that could be the reason. So if you're feeling that way or you have felt that way, when we make change, our psyche knows it and tries to resist or can be conflicted with that. Yeah. So.
And you're not alone. Like, so many of us are dealing with this or have dealt with this in our past. So you're not alone in this. Should we talk about what a narcissist is or what we think it is?
Absolutely, Heather. Yeah.
So just in case someone isn't familiar with the term.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure. Are you?
Well, I was just looking down to see if anyone was joining us.
Sure.
For me, I just feel like it's the opposite of an empath. So I feel like we are the ones that seek out people, or we don't seek them out, but we want to help and be of service and kind of gravitate towards helping and healing. But then I feel like the narcissist is like the opposite side of the coin. They attract people, but they are more ego driven. It's more about them and how they can be more self-serving. So I feel like it's kind of two ends of the spectrum.
I agree. Although in my experience as an intuitive, I question if the narcissist is actually an empath that had something so horrible happen that they stuffed it down so far. So when I read for people and they have fear, it will be in their solar plexus, which is that area where your rib cage opens up. Mm-hmm. And then if I can't see beyond something when they have a question like where's their career headed or this relationship, I'll look there and there's actually a cross section of a nautilus shell that's kind of strange that I have to pull away, and then I can see behind it. And that nautilus shell represents that they're incubating something, but they're protecting it. So ultimately, I think that the narcissist possibly could be protecting that knowing. And I've had more than two, but I've had two people that were narcissists that I broke them by holding a position that was gentle and neutral. Mm-hmm. And when they come clean, they kind of like, I actually saw with one of them a wall that moved away from that solar plexus area. It was a brick wall. And they cried and they said, you're right, Amy. It is this way. Or, and I thought, wow. So I think they want to be freed. But how I would say narcissism is for me is it is all about them. But it's also when you try to get in there most ways, they'll thwart you. So they're all about disconnection, whereas the empath is all about connection. And that's where I would say the extreme difference is in my mind. And that's tricky because the narcissist always seems right? Because they thwart you like, oh, you just don't know. And then you think, well, maybe I don't, because you're the empath. So you're like, well, I'm open to that. And then you start to believe it.
Well, and that's true. So I think there might be, for me, I see it in a couple different ways. Like people that have it, maybe they were, I don't know if you can be born with it or they just are that way. And then others that develop it as almost a safety or protection throughout their life, like the way they were raised or different experiences in their life. So maybe they were sensitive and empathic, and then they put it up as a protection and then turned into more of that narcissistic behavior. So
Right.
similar to what you were saying. And I think we both kind of came together and had that, we're like, aha moment, right? Because we see it in our, like I see it in a family, my mom actually, who I thought was a narcissist, but as I've become more aware of being an empath myself, I see that in her as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we had that conversation, like, can she be both?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's truth around that as well, or
Right.
there is truth probably around.
And could it be both ways, that there are people who are empathic, like the same thing happens where a child maybe is prone more personality wise or psyche to behave a certain way that elicits a reaction from their parents that then creates that narcissistic piece, or the kid, same idea, but the kid is sensitive or the kid isn't sensitive, and then this experience happens where they take on that narcissistic quality to really ultimately protect themselves.
Mhm.
But it's sad because they can't see anybody else exactly, or whatever the issue is emotionally or physically or however, which can be varietal.
Right. So then the question is, how do we attract that, right? Because that seems to be um, a theme that I see with empathic people or highly sensitive people, that they attract the narcissist in relationships.
Well, so could we say, I've said this to somebody in my life, you were attracted to me for a reason, and clearly you want out of that narcissistic behavior to be able to come back to yourself. And so if you don't want that with me, then your other option is to, be connected to somebody who is more robotic, that they don't have emotional needs or these physical needs or these like needs at all. And so I think that when we think about that, the narcissist probably attracts to us because they want out of it. And they don't, so I mean, in a way, again, as a reader, I have seen in relationships that a partner will nearly destroy the other person. That sounds terrible, but really harsh on them, so that they rise up in their power and they take their power back. So in a way, it's not that you created that and that's wrong and you did that. It's more that likened energy attracts to itself. So, okay, saying that, is it true that narcissists are sensitive people who had something happen in childhood? I mean, if likened things are attracted, they have a barrier that they can't release to let go and come into that sensitive self. I don't know. I'm talking in circles a little bit.
Right. Right. We're trying to, we're not therapists or
Yeah.
psychologists either. So we're just doing a conversation based on our own personal experiences and our intuition and what we feel as well. And I think that too, I mean, and so if you can't rise to your power, or you're not ready to at that time, people they're replaying that pattern. So an empath might continuously have those relationships. So you have a narcissistic relationship with you have a partner and then you break that relationship, and then you seem to attract another one. Do you think it's because you haven't learned what you're supposed to learn from those situations? I'm just wondering, because I have never had a partnership like that. I have a parent, but not a relationship like that specifically. I had a friendship and a parent, but not a significant other type of.
Yeah, I think that my mother is a narcissist, and that, boy, that feels like AA.
Right. I know.
Um,
We could.
all of a sudden it's alive. But that she is, Heather, what was your question? You said, is it?
Well, I see it with some empaths that they keep having that same relationship over and over, like a pattern. So do you think like they just haven't learned what they need to learn from that, or they're not empowered maybe, or feel like they have embraced who they are as an empath?
Well, and I think it's yes, but also no.
Okay,
And the reason I
yeah.
say no is, when you think about our journey as a human, we're not necessarily going to solve everything in this lifetime. Like that's the way it is, kind of. So, in essence, like I know I was supposed to be born to a mother like this. And so, what the reason is, I will spend my life figuring that out to rewrite the storm of that or the experience. But in where I am now is I can look back at her and say, boy, you were my best, like the best teacher I could have. I could never come and play a role and be such a icky person.
Right.
I couldn't do that. I mean, maybe I could, I don't know. But I think to some degree, I realize that's like the most ultimately loving thing for her to teach me that way through rejection, which is really hard to have a mother that sets that situation up. So um, yeah, I think that we are, I don't know. I don't have a way to sum it up. My mind is swimmy
Yeah.
today. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, no, and that's okay. I told a friend once too that that was not. I didn't come here this time in my life to have that type of relationship with a significant other, because I can look at all of those with boyfriends and my husband. I haven't had that relationship, so I don't know if I dealt with that some time ago or whatever. I have had really amazing relationships that way, but I've had a friendship that was narcissistic friendship, and a mother. So I think we all have them in different ways. So it doesn't always have to be a significant other or your spouse. So bringing that awareness too, that it can be a friendship. Like I had a friendship over 20 years that I came all of a sudden to realize that she was a narcissist. It was always a one-way, one-sided relationship. And it took me that long. Like I thought she was the most amazing best friend, but it took me some painful years to figure out that was not the truth. But I had to step away completely and disconnect. So we have no relationship.
Heather, I think that's a really good point. I think another pattern you can look at in your own life is like in my journey, it's across the board. I have attracted a bunch of narcissists, and I kind of think I know why to some degree, but maybe I don't have the full pattern solved. But Heather, for you, you might notice you attract female narcissists.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, that's true.
relationships with women are tricky. And like for me, it's across the board. And for others, it might be only males that are narcissistic, or, I think it might depend on what your journey is. And isn't it interesting that, with you, it's your mom and then it moves out to these women or feminine relationships. But for me, it transgressed into these, like all these different types of relationships with men and women. So it's like, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So that shows, I mean, it can all be a different type of relationship
Right.
for sure. Well, and one thing that I was kind of, you know me, I like to research. So I was looking a little bit more about it. And it just said too that they are resistant to feeling vulnerable with anyone. Like they're so protective of not getting to that space of vulnerability and showing weakness. And so you wonder if that goes back to maybe at some point in their life, they experienced some situation where they were showing weakness or being vulnerable and they got hurt. And so their type of personality shifted and went into being opposite, being more narcissistic then to protect themselves.
I agree. I think that's exactly what I see in my experience with the narcissists I've known. That's exactly what I see has happened. I don't know that that's every narcissist.
Right. I think there's different levels too,
Right.
in different types, just like empaths and everyone. We're all different, right?
Yeah, for sure. I
And
think,
that's,
go ahead,
well, I
Heather.
was just going to say, and that's what I see with my mom. I know she was abused as a child by her father. And so I think that shut her down for sure. I mean,
Right.
that was for protection. I'm not going to show emotion or be vulnerable, probably. She has never spoke about the reason that, but her behavior then as raising a child, me and my brother, I can see then that narcissistic behavior, that overreaction, that passive aggressiveness, and that, she's misunderstood and all of this other behaviors. So
that's really tricky too, because they project onto you what you actually are experiencing, so you're misunderstood and they're telling them, oh, I'm misunderstood. That's makes it super challenging.
right.
Yeah.
So before we end, I don't know, do you have something we could tell people that are maybe in that
Yeah.
place right now?
I mean, my advice would just be the thing that's most important for the empath and the intuitive and the highly sensitive is to be in touch with your knowing. And if you can't hear your inner voice or you aren't connected to that, that is a red flag for a highly sensitive, especially. So, find your power to say, I have to find the way that I can be, whether it's creative or live your full life. If you aren't feeling happy, you've got to address that. But you have to address it with yourself. You can't necessarily change them, but you
Right.
can state things very gently and clearly that are true. And then we should maybe maybe I'll do a side post about that, because there's a specific way that I've used to break in a narcissist, and maybe it's not like the full all out, but that's what I'd say. It's all about empowerment and
That is so true.
stand up to them, or stand in your own shoes and not worry about what they think. That's the other piece, because then they're going to be like, why don't you care? And they'll, kind of.
And that's kind of what I had to do with my mom. Was once I dealt with some of my own healing and got to a place of self-love, and then she was doing some comments on my Facebook. This is a few years ago. Facebook that were not appropriate. I actually had to block her. So she is not someone on my Facebook page, and I know things that I can share with her and things that I can't share with her. So that's just how our relationship is. Yeah. And I can't hope for anything more. I just have to accept what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's tricky, but there are ways.
It's so tricky. And we are here to support. We have our Patreon that we're going to talk about a little bit here too. We are here to support you in any way we can. We have launched a Patreon site, it's called Experience Empath there. And I know Amy has a link in here for more information on that. We really want to support you and have you feel empowered and strong in your trait as an empath or highly sensitive person. Want to add to that? I know.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think that that's a really, we have different levels in there of giving you offerings that will help develop that space and also give you merit to your experience and help you understand or flesh out, how do you see it from a different angle so that you can embrace it? Because there are so many beautiful things about being empathic, which Heather and I down the road have this really incredible story that I think really, really shares the beauty of being empathic and all. So definitely join us at Patreon, take a look at it and see if it's a match for you. If it's not, it's not. Life is short. But if it is, it's something that can, we can be there to support your journey for sure.
In turn, your support help us too, so we can provide more for everyone. Yeah.
We're both spending a lot of time writing, and so it's a win-win, which I'm an altruist, so I love that.
All right. Yeah. And conversation number 7.
Yeah, so conversation number 7 is women speaking up as empaths. So it's a great follow-up from this one to really learn how to speak up and use that voice of yours.
And if you are a member of Patreon, we continue these conversations. So we go deeper, and those are for our Patreon members. So if you want to hear what we talk about after this recording or this live, you need to be one of our members.
It's the special secret episode.
Yes.
So join us. We look forward to connecting there. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
All right, Heather, we're still recording. We're moving into the next section, you guys. Welcome to this part. I didn't look at my list, so I'm going to take a second and look at my list. But
yeah, well, and I found one thing that said 8 signs of narcissism that most people don't realize.
Okay.
But I think I realized them
Good for you, Heather. You're so
But
smart.
I don't know. Maybe not everyone realized them. So I could say them briefly if you want, if you're still looking over like your notes, Amy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And I talked a little bit about them in the previous segment. So based on my mom, but narcissists tend to overreact. Narcissists are very passive aggressive. Narcissists often consider themselves to be misunderstood. They think the whole world is against them and no one understands them, which can be confusing because we can usually figure them out,
Right.
right? Nice narcissists are very sensitive and anything can set them off.
See, there it is, Heather. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the very
No,
I
when I read that too this morning, right? So it says, while it might not seem narcissists are very sensitive, even the smallest things can have them ready to explode. You can say something small or do something that they necessarily don't agree with, and they will never let you live it down.
That's
They
right.
hold the grudges too, right?
Yeah.
And they'll bring them up and remind you. And narcissists do not care about your boundaries and will step all over them. Narcissists do not fare well when it comes to criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And last one, narcissists are some of the most fun and exciting people to be around because of how charming and interesting the narcissist people, how they are. So people love to be around them. They draw in people for many reasons and hard to get away from. I think that's their what they're trying to do too.
Yeah.
They're trying to draw in people because that feeds them. They're like their ego kind of.
Right.
See, I never liked, yeah. I don't think that those were surprising.
No,
Or I don't realize. I was like, I realized pretty much all of those.
I think the hardest one is they're hard to get away from. It's like what they've said and how they behave, even if you separated from them, it's like, hi, you got to work hard to get their words out of your head.
Yeah.
Your way of
Right. They do damage.
They do. Well, isn't it, one of my friends said, damaged people damage people. I think that's from Mary Trump's book about Trump's family.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that before that too. I mean, it's probably,
but
which makes
recently,
sense, right? It's almost like I'm going to get you back. Or, yeah.
Exactly. Let me damage you too.
Yeah.
Let's do
Or
that.
damage others. Yeah.
I think everything that you've said, Heather, on that list is totally accurate. The way I say it is they want to control.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, the other side of that is people who enable things. Yeah, that's.
And when they're out of control, they get really angry and upset.
That's right. And they
What
can't.
I see.
And I've seen that in action. Like when you say that, I'm like, oh, I can think of a specific instance where they can't calm themselves or come back to that place, but they just thwart you, right? So they're going to put it back on you. And that's the problem, is it's all the bad stuff is you.
Yeah.
I mean, even my mom said to me as an adult, I was 38 years old, and she said, it's harder to love you, Amy, than it is to love somebody else. And she was referring to my husband, because I know too much about you. And that's really warped. Like, that's the opposite. I know everything about my kids and I love them because of it. And she doesn't get that at all. Yeah. I come from a pretty warped place. Oh. So she can't understand. Like, here's what it meant to me when she said it is, it's like everything I've done wrong or had negativity or anything is a piled mountain that she remembers. But all the things I did well and accounted for something that was a measure of who I really am, she doesn't care about.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, what a way to control and annihilate. I mean, she used to say things just too, like, I think we're relatively smart people, but she's like, I know your IQs and you're not very smart. I mean, just terrible. And I think she didn't feel smart, but she is very, very smart.
Yeah.
So it's,
wow.
Yeah. And well, yeah.
Well, it's similar. That reminds me of my mom too. In the first part of this, I said she was abused by her father, and he had issues with money. Mm-hmm. Money. Yeah. gambling and all these money issues. And at one point in my life, this is me being very vulnerable. At one point in my life, I had, in college, got like my credit cards up and I needed my parents' help with that. And she's like, you remind me of my dad. She told me that. And her dad was an abuser. I mean, someone that abused her. And I thought, oh my God, I am so horrible.
Oh, Heather.
So that, I mean, that right there shows you too, like she switched it so much onto me.
Right.
And I'm like, really, probably why I'm spending is to fill up something inside of me that was created from you or, my parenting. Yeah.
Right.
So now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was it. She never really saw the good that I did. She would always bring up the bad. And I was like, and I remember being like, I never did drugs or was bad or ran away or like
Right.
skipped
Right.
school, or I was like really a good girl, and I always tried to be. That was part of my trying to please my mom. But then she would still bring up bad things that weren't even really that horrible. But so that's how they play. It's like they don't play fair.
No, and the statement I used to say is, "You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't." Like you can't win. So, and I think there are like a myriad of examples. I say to people when I talk about a mother who's narcissistic, I'll say, it's the mother who says to you, you went to camp and you broke your leg and it is so painful and so bad. And you're at the, wherever ER, and the mom comes in and says, oh my God, I knew I shouldn't have sent you to camp.
Yeah.
So my mom behaved off of that type of thinking, not that specific example.
Mm-hmm.
So much we thought she could see everything. Because it's like she knew, right? So we thought she knew that this was going to happen, but it was all about her. She didn't say to you, honey, oh my gosh, how are you? It was, I knew I shouldn't have sent you to camp. Well, how awful, right? I mean, like, what?
Well, I'm laughing because I think I told you this story. My car broke down on the way home from college. I had to hitch a ride from some lady because I was walking on the side of the highway. And I had a quarter.
Oh, Heather, I've never heard this story.
You haven't heard the story. So
Oh.
she dropped me off at like the next exit at a restaurant. I had like one quarter to and then we had payphones at the time.
Yes.
I had like a quarter to call. And so I called home because I thought, oh, I have to call home. That's safe. And I called my mom and I'm like, my car broke down. And she's like, I didn't even want you to buy that car.
What?
I was like crying,
Heather.
and I think she even hung up on me, and it was like I had to go write a check then to get it was my fault that the car broke down because she didn't want me to buy that car.
And the sad thing is, it's simple. It's so simple. You get that phone call and you say, honey, what do you need?
Didn't even ask.
Yeah.
I was like, I will never do that to my child.
No.
So I think that's where we've maybe learned too on our parenting.
Right.
Or being a human.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I think it's how, I guess that the argument would be, because they took the burden of this narcissism and they gave us something more than they had, did we get this benefit of being able to live more freely? Although I think I'm a lot more like my father, and I'm guessing you would say maybe the same. So it's like, is it just generational? But my mom spent a lot of time telling us how horrible my father's family was. And then when she'd be done with that, she'd turn to me or to one of my sisters that was like my dad's family and say, well, you're a lot like them. Kind of that same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I do think that it's hard to say. I mean, my mom had a very traumatic experience as a young child. She lost her dad when she was very young. Mm-hmm. And she remembers it because she was old enough to know. And so I think that things like that, where she shut down, they didn't help her deal with it. And they just let her kind of rule how it went, which is not, I don't think that's advisable. Giving the kids some leeway because they're struggling is something, but to just not acknowledge, and touch base. And maybe that's part of it, is the family was very non-emotional, and perhaps my mom is an emotional person and just needed that, but never had it. So she stayed very strong. And I mean, that's something I would say to women who are empathic, and we should talk about this next week, is I don't think strong is a very good word for us, because we can endure a lot of bullshit. I've seen it.
Oh,
I think Right. I think that we are incredibly strong, but I think being strong is not necessarily a good tack for us long term. I think instead recognizing this isn't healthy, or asking for the change, or advocating for ourselves in the ways that we need.
Good
So
one. We don't have to be strong.
no, and we are so, like, I think that empaths, I don't know, this is my experience though, will endure bullshit for a very long time because we're so loving. We're like, I'm a basket of puppies, come here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it can be really bad for us. And we just think, if I just bring my joy and love, but then that gets sucked. So that strength isn't always good.
Great point, because I think that's the pattern of people that continually have a narcissistic significant other.
Probably, Heather. It's probably true.
So
Yep.
they think I can help them, I can heal them, I'm going to stick it out,
Yep.
I made a commitment.
It's true.
That's a great point on that.
Yeah. Don't endure.
Don't endure. You don't have to be that strong. Like, that's breaking point.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that was good, Amy.
Oh, great. See, that's
Ooh,
why these conversations, because it brings up, like, I didn't see that. You pulled it out.
yeah. Because it was like a, yeah, yep. Because that's it. Empaths are sensitive people. We want to help and heal, and we think we can, and we stick in there and keep trying and trying. And there, it gets to the point where you are in danger of your health.
Right. They'll drain you dry,
They'll drain you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Anything else on this conversation?
I don't know. Let me just look at I didn't never peek at my list. I was just compelled by what you were saying. To recognize too that if you had a narcissistic parent, that they couldn't nurture and care for you the way you needed, like they couldn't really meet your needs. So I think really attending to that, about being aware of, I have needs and I'm going to get those met some way, even if it's not this way, is really important. And not letting people confuse your words. Like, I had somebody once tell me something in my life was a need when it actually was a want. And so I was like, you know what, that's not okay with me. And that's not how it is. You know what I mean? So just call it out. I think it's important to define and state, again, that power piece. Heather, do you have anything else, or?
No, one thing when you were saying that, just I see grudges. My mom holds grudges for sure for a long period of time. And she'll still bring up things like, your aunt never gave a birthday or never gave me a gift when you were born. Like, she's still upset about that. Like, I don't know why I brought that up, but I just see that pattern in her. Like, I'm like, how, that just must be a burden to carry that for you.
And it's so
long.
so superficial. I feel like, when you were reading that list of the narcissistic personality, I was like, oh, I kind of hold grudges, but I actually don't. But where I hold them is when I legitimately have been wronged.
Yes.
The person can't, like, they say they're sorry, and I'm like, okay, that's great. You're at least admitting and seeing this, but then they aren't willing to change. So they keep doing the same pattern in different experiences. That is really, I can't seem to let that go, but I think that's more an empathic thing, or a sensitive, like, it still is wrong, and I need to know you will not do this again, kind of a thing,
Yeah, well, and I think you can feel, or empaths, sensitive people can feel that that wasn't their truth, that maybe they weren't really sorry. So we can probably feel it on a different level.
Yep. Well, right. They might say
just saying the words, right?
But they don't really know what it means to
Yeah.
change that and make it like that. Saying sorry, then we change the pattern. But if that doesn't change,
so it's probably not really like a grudge. It's more like a hurt that's still.
It is, yeah.
Or a wound, or that's still there.
Yeah, know the difference, because I feel like with my kids and my husband, I do not hold grudges. My kids would say, if anything, I think they'd say, boy, mom, you're quick to get over it, like super quick. But yeah, where there's hurt, I guess that's something to watch out for. Empaths, because we, can be too hard on ourselves too, I think, is part of that personality,
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I say that too. Certain things I'm like, I remember.
Right.
but then other things I totally let go. So I think it's the feeling we can behind it, or the energy behind it, that we can know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
That if it's a true change, or we're, not.
Right.
So
It's true. And trusting that, and, yeah, knowing it's going to be okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Heather, should I tell the way that I've broken the narcissist here? Is that something?
Sure. Well, we could.
Yeah. I mean, we have a little time here, so I'll maybe
Yeah.
make sense. But when I was young, my mom was at the kitchen table with me, and she was standing up and I was standing up, and my dad was sitting across the table one of the times. The other time we were alone. But I just stated something to her that was true. So maybe I had a black piece of fabric in my hand, and I just said, that's black. I just stayed in this very calm, relaxed position, and she'd fight me and fight me and fight me and fight me over what, I don't really know, but just round and round. Well, that can't be, that's not what we're going to use, or just, and then when she'd be quiet, I'd pause again and say, that I just want you to hear me say, that is black. Like, I want you to know what I'm seeing and saying, round and round and round and round. So they go about it for a long time. Like, you got to be patient and put up with it. But finally, one of the times, my dad, when he was there, finally said to her, it is black. And that was we normally didn't advocate for each other in our house, because it was every person for themselves. It was just very clear that there was a lot of competition, and somebody had to be on the outs all the time. So we would not stick up for each other, not even parents to the child. So unless it was my mom, sometimes she would, but it would be a bad thing, kind of. So my dad stuck up. So that was a pattern change, and that knocked her over, and she started bawling and like heaved through crying and released and said, you're right, Amy, you're right. And I've done it another time with her, and I've done it with another person in my life. The other person in my life, it took him 45 minutes of me just stating a very simple thing about wanting them to hear me say something. Not that what I was telling them I needed them to do, but just to hear me say it. And they were like fighting tooth and nail 45 minutes. But I just held that position. And when they broke, it was in an instant. And they said, oh my gosh, like you can almost see they kind of shake and like, what? And they said to me, I am so obtuse. What do I do about this? What do we do about this? And when I made a recommendation, I could actually see how their experience right there was familial and it came from their lineage. It was kind of, I was awestruck. I was like, holy crap. I see exactly where this is coming from. So I had recommended maybe some therapy or some help that way. And immediately their reaction was to involve somebody else with them in therapy beyond, like the immediate people there. So I thought, this is really weird. So you don't be surprised if they say something very strange. It probably has to do with a lot of layers of how they think they're supposed to behave because of their lineage and their energy and all of this junk. But if you just hold that position about something that is undeniably true, like you could say, I just need you to hear me say that my hair is gray and white. Or, I mean, that's silly, but whatever the topic is, just ask them to hear you say it. Not even that you need them to agree with you or whatever. And eventually they'll hear it, but you'll watch. They'll fight around the thing. Like if you said, I just want you to hear me say, like there's too much drinking happening in our house or something like that, they'll fight around and be like, I don't ever get to drink. It's just incredible. The level, like my friends, I only drink with them, like all the things, I just made that up, but like the things that come out are really, you'll hear it all in the way of, you'll be like, I know exactly what's going on when you see that, but they move forward to get to that solar plexus to release and feel safe. So what you're doing is you're giving them a platform on which to trust you. I'm only asking you to hear me say. And then when they realize that, they're like, oh, you just need me to hear you. You're not asking me to stop drinking or do this, but they can't hear it. It's insane. So you can see how deep they're embedded in that experience, which is sad.
Well, and you're just keeping like the same tone of voice too, right?
Asking the same thing.
So you're not getting emotionally.
Nope. So the one time I did it with one of the people, I sat on the couch and I can't totally show you here, but I actually leaned down like this. and just looked. And then I put my hand and I'm like, I need you to hear me, simply hear me say. And I just kept that position,
Mhm.
used a really calm voice, let
Mhm.
them run it out, all their, and gave them like 10 seconds where they were quiet to 15, which is hard. And then
Yeah.
said it again.
Sorry.
And,
Yeah.
you're an empath. Like one of the times when I did this, the next, like that day, I could feel the energy of like that person might come and kill me. It was very strange.
Yeah.
But I felt like they could actually hurt me. And I had never felt that before with them. So it's
Right.
like it really scared them that much. Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's and it sustained. Once they had that experience, they could see that. But for my mom, I mean, part of me gives her grace, which is so stupid. but, but she had 5 kids and all this busy life, and so I was the youngest of the 5, but I feel like her launch back into life was so probably against her nature. There wasn't much space for her. Like, she's a reader. She could just like read a book, super fast. Didn't get much time to have that downtime in that space. And, didn't know how. I mean, as part of it too, but
Right.
I think it was part of the generation, not necessarily her
Yes.
fault. Like, she
Yes.
could have figured it out. But so I think, she would swallow back into that space too quickly because she was already so unnerved. Yeah. But
Wow.
yeah,
I think that'll help people too that are listening to this.
I think so. I mean, it's pretty easy and it's really non-threatening. I mean, it's a way to
Yeah.
see, and I would do it with something that's kind of important to you. So it's something that you're like, I need you to hear this, like a way that you may have been wronged, or um, something like that I said earlier, where a need, you were told it was a need, but it was actually a want of yours. That's a tricky thing for a narcissist to say, because it's like they're trying to control you with that. So then stating back, I want you to hear me say that this is a want for me, could be a nice, just there's some simple ways, and take time to think about it too. What is the way for you to do it? And then once you've figured it out, inform them, hey, do you have time to sit down? Because you're also going to meet them more neutrally for a little while and talk to me about this. Because there's a possibility some people are flight people, where they won't stick around or they'll fight.
In that too. Yeah.
You kind of want the fight to get them to wear it out, and then, oh, I'm hearing you now. so,
Yeah.
so if you have a fleer, you might, I in my experience, one of my people was a fleer. Whoops. And so it's taken a while to get them to not flee. And
That seems like my mom would be a fleer.
yeah, it's possible because it's so
She
uncomfortable for them. And,
sleeps with other, yeah.
yeah.
When there's other things that are upsetting to her, she goes to a room and slams the door.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, that's another thing. If you have children with a narcissist, we have a rule in our house. We have 3 rules: love, don't bite, and no slamming doors. Well, we had pets first. So I'm like, love, don't bite, no slamming doors. And I can never remember the third one. Well, we did have kind of 3 rules, but I'm like, those were simple for children to follow, like love, don't bite. That makes total sense across the board. Like,
Right?
don't be mean to somebody, figure your own crap out, and then
Yeah.
come back to them.
Yeah.
And even when my kids, like if the wind slams the door, they'll open it and they'll say, it was the wind. Like, we're
Oh,
so
yeah.
aware of it. So
Huh?
setting some rules so that, and I do think with a fleer, if somebody flees,
Yeah.
chase them. And they will, what happens is the same thing, sort of. They might slam a door and you're on the other side and it's locked. And you say to them, I still want you to, like, fierce, I still want you to tell me what is going on for you. Because they
Yeah.
likely will, because they have no escape.
Yeah.
And likely say, like, I need, and that's actually a good thing, because then you can say to them, I heard you, like, later.
Yeah.
Heard you say this is what you need. And then they might deny it, but say, I'm going to trust you that in that moment you actually said what you truly need. And that's, I want you to talk freely that way to me all the time.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Oh, I could totally see how helpful that would be. I'm just imagining my mom even. I don't think she's ever had somebody talk to her that way. Like,
Well,
or even have that care where they just keep following her, because they would just let her go and be
Right, but then she
storm
would
off.
torch. And I know, like with my mom, not worth it. With my other person, worth it because they're
Yeah, yeah.
reachable, they
Well,
do
that's true. Okay.
care. So I think you got to weigh your options of what is what is right for you. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I mean, I think one other thing I'll say is for some of us as empaths, there's a point at which it's not appropriate to be with our family. And that
yeah,
can be for a timeline, or like Heather said earlier, she's had to unfriend her mom on Facebook. The degree to which you do it doesn't matter. But if the family, like, I play with toys that are not broken. And the reason I play with toys that are not broken is because they take care of themselves and they respect all of that. Whereas I feel like my family is a bunch of broken toys and I can't play with them.
yeah,
So if that's not available, I want you to think about that because it can be very hurtful and harmful to continue to force yourself to be with people. Or I
mhm,
hear a lot of parents who live with their children, their adult children, as they're aging. And I think that's a tricky thing. And God bless you. I mean, but I also think there's a place to make sure you have your footing and you aren't a part of that crazy making, because you leave there and it's like that carries with you because you're empathic. It's
yeah,
tricky. You can say you protect yourself, or you only engage so far might be a strategy, but
yeah,
don't endure. It's that whole endurance thing. So, and don't feel bad if it's, I like the idea of a family, but I'm not, and I think my family's incredible. Like they're incredible people, but I can't be with them. And it's very frustrating, but it's like, you know what? What's the lesser of the two evils?
yeah,
In leaving an event and feeling like you're ruminating, or just hanging out with my little family and being really joyful.
yeah,
So that's kind of something too to think about.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing that, Amy.
Yeah, Heather, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Anything else, or are we good on this?
No, I think we've got this topic covered. And yeah, I think that it's a tricky one for sure. It's a delicate one.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we care about you.
we do. And thank you for being members.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
thanks for being here on Patreon and supporting us. And we want to support you. So keep watching these shows. There's more to come. That's information like this. It's just our vulnerable conversations about being experienced empaths. Literally, we have been living our life this way, and I've been very highly aware of it, I think, early. So we tuned in and recognized people need to hear other people's experiences. And that vulnerability shared, I believe, is really how we surpass fear and move into self-expression. And that's a massive thing that's important to me. So thanks for being here.
well, and I think too, going through different stages of our lives and then also having children as well helps us share those experiences.
Yeah, for certain.
That, yeah, place. So thank you for being members, and we'll see you on our next conversation.
See you later.
Yeah, thank you.